Hey guys, welcome back to Draw Along Doodles with Walker. We are making part of our Thanksgiving edition, and we are going to make a cornucopia. Now, cornucopia means horn of plenty. You'll notice it kind of looks like a ram's horn or a sheep's horn. And generally, you will find it filled with things. A lot of times, it's like harvest foods, like fruits and vegetables, things you think of when you think of fall and picking all of the great things you've grown in your crop. So, in order to start this, we're going to come close to the front of the paper and we're going to make a nice big O. So it's not really a circle and it's not as skinny as a letter or number 0, but a nice big O. All right. Now we're going to give our basket a little bit of a rim because usually these are woven. I'm not going to worry so much about this bottom part because it is going to get covered up by fruit or whatever you put in it. Now, I'm going to come down a little bit from the top of my rim, and I'm going to curve back, down, and then I'm going to come and curve up. Now, the bottom is what really helps give you that idea of a horn because it's going to come in from the rim, and then it's going to round up, getting smaller and coming to a point with the rest. Now, some people like to have like a little curly Q at the end. That's totally a personal opinion thing. Okay, let's get our kind of weaving marks coming through here. So I'm coming and I'm adding lines that are fanning out from the end to the front of my cornucopia. And I'm not going to make them perfectly finished. I'm just going to give you the idea. So now I'm having lines that are following the curve right here so that it looks like I'm moving around the cornucopia and not just flat. Okay. Now it's time to fill our cornucopia with lots of good stuff. I'm going to use some traditional things, but if you wanted, you could fill your cornucopia with anything. There might be, a giant gummy bear, or there might be gumballs or candy or a Big Mac. It's up to you. The whole point of it is to show that there's a bounty, that there's plenty. It's a celebration of having enough. So I'm going to come start my pumpkin. I'm going to make one of those small ones that you can get at the checkout stand. So I've curved around and made almost a C. I'm going to curve around and make the second part of that to touch. Now I'm going to let myself get this back bump and the back bump. And then one bump across the back. And I'm going to make my stem kind of like a witch's hat. It's going to be getting skinnier and curving. Okay. Now to make sure I don't get confused, because this is a lot of lines, I'm going to erase where the cornucopia goes through my pumpkin. Okay. Now I'm going to come and add a leaf down here to kind of symbolize the fact that the weather is changing. So to get my leaf the right shape, I'm going to add one triangle, 2 triangles, and 3 triangles. All right, now from here, I'm going to come and cut a little bit out of there. I'll get point on that side and point on this side. And then I'm going to add another ruffle or a point right there. And then in this one, I'll add a point. So what that ends up looking like is a little bit more of a natural leaf as opposed to a piece of geometry. There we go. It'll feel a little bit more leaf-like. All right, and now I'm going to get my veins running through there. You might want to get more detailed with your veins. I kind of like to leave it a little simple because we've got a lot going on here. All right, let's add some corn or maize, as you might call it, because that was something that was very big and is still a big fall harvest item. All right, so there's the cob for my corn. Now I'm going to make a sheath, which is the green part. I'm going to make that sheath coming around it. So it's going to come across and up to meet that. And now it's going to come down and touch the back of the corn so that it looks like it's wrapping around the corn. There we go. All right, I'm going to get a second sheath right here. So up, one curve. And now I'm going to get a second curve right there. I want the corn to look like it's fresh and new. All right, let's add a tomato. Tomatoes are always delicious. You might have something else you really like. And I'm going to get the little green part where it was connected. I'm also going to add some grapes because grapes are a fabulous way to fill space that you have that's kind of an awkward space because they're a little bit amorphous. You can make them fit anything you need them to fit. So I've got grapes. And if you decided you needed more purple, then grapes is a great way to get it. Or if you decided you needed more green, you can also get that. All right, so there's some grapes. And I'm going to add a couple sheaths of wheat. So wheat is, like corn, a big fall harvest item. So there's my little stem. I'm going to make an oval to help give myself the grain. And now to make it, I'm going to go eyeball, 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 and a point at the top. Okay, I'm going to put one down here to kind of balance it out. So this one you won't really be able to see the stem, but you're going to be able to see the grain. So eyeball, 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 eyeball. Some people also like to think about those as petals. So if you're not familiar with an eyeball shape, a petal shape will work just fine. Okay, now we're going into Sharpie. I'm going to do the fruit first because the fruit is sitting in front of my cornucopia. So what's the furthest to the front? Aha, our pumpkin. Okay. Let's get him so that he has what he needs. We'll get the part that's in front, closest to us. We will add this coming across the back. All right, we've got a pumpkin. Next closest to the front is our leaf. Now, I did make one of our grapes lean over the leaf, so I'm going to come back and do that really fast. Okay. Now I'm going to trace the places where we made it a little bit textured. Give it its simple veins. Okay. Now I'm going to go and trace the rest of my grapes so that I've got them on there. And you'll notice I actually had the line for the pumpkin a little bit wider than what I ended up doing And so I'm just expanding the grapes to make it fill that space, to make it look like what I did was intentional. If you make a mistake, just make it work in that situation. You don't have to worry about like, oh no. Because this is a drawing you're doing from memory or imagination. It's not something that has to be exact to make sense. All right, I'm going to go over my tomato. Okay, I'm going to come over my sheath of wheat. So there's my eyeball, or you could call it my seed or my flower petal shape. Okay, we've got those now. You'll notice I'm always letting one lay in front of the other so that they overlap. Now, when it comes to the corn, I'm going to go ahead and get the one that's curving around in front, the big sheath of the ear. And then I'm also going to do that with the second one. I'm going to lean it a little bit less than I did. Okay. Now, in order to show you where the corn like kernels are, I'm actually going to draw rows of little rectangles where I put the cob shape. So I'm just going to come in and I'll follow that cob shape. Obviously, your kernels will not all be perfectly even, which makes sense because corn on the cob is not perfectly even. So I'm coming in and putting those little rectangles in there. I will say this looks a lot more believable than just going in and putting crisscrossing lines. And the reason for that is that you do not get quite as even of a pattern when you do this. So it makes it more believable with what's really happening when you look at corn. You want it to look sort of organic, like it came about itself. Okay, almost done with that. Make sure you're showing us where it goes back into the sheath, where it's getting hidden, so that you're not leaving that part out. All right, the last thing we have that's in our cornucopia is the second shaft of wheat. Chew. Eyeball, 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 and the point at the top. All right. So last but not least, what we have is our Sharpie for our cornucopia. You can decide if you want this rim to have some texture or not. If you do, then generally you want it to be fanning around. So I'm going to make it pretty smooth. I'm not going to complicate our lives with a little extra texture. If you do want to come in and get a little bit of wrapping texture, then you can kind of come let it curve around the top. All right. Now we're going to come get the back of the cornucopia and the bottom of the cornucopia. And then we're going to let those lines that were the really loose definition of our weaving come in. Because we want to keep it pretty loose so that people can think cornucopia, but they won't be stopped by any kind of detail that their eyeballs realize is off. We want to be able to give them the idea without having to give them the entire thing. Okay, your cornucopia is all done. It's time to erase and add some color. Enjoy, guys.